So Republican lawmakers in Georgia want to build a statue of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Democrats are like, we'd rather keep Confederate statues up. State Senator Emanuel Jones went off on Clarence Thomas on the floor in the legislature. Listen to this.
I know it's very, very sensitive to talk about race in this body, but any time that we have a legislation proposing to place a statue of Clarence Thomas on this grounds, we cannot avoid that conversation, so I'm not going to avoid it either. In the black community, we have an expression, and I don't want to use this label too deeply here because I'm just trying to tell you what we have in the African-American community. When we talk about a person of color, that goes back historically to the days of slavery and that person betraying his own community, we have a term in the black community. That term that we use is called Uncle Tom. And Uncle Tom is either a fictional or non-fictional character. I don't really know the origin of Uncle Tom, but it talks about a person who back during the days of slavery sold his soul to the slave masters. That's the story, the fictition of the story of an Uncle Tom. So when we think about a person in the black community who's accomplished, but yet policies seek to subvert, some may even say suppress, the achievements and accomplishments of people of color, I couldn't help but to think about that term in expressing my dissatisfaction with this particular legislation. Folks, as I said last year, y'all just don't get it. And I don't expect people of non-color to get the sensitivity that we feel about a person of color whose policies and practices and decisions and votes that we've rallied and fought against.
Well, now, he was clear how he feels bad. Look, I don't use the term Uncle Tom. I don't use Oreo. I don't use those phrases. I can criticize somebody without using names, but I can tell you right now, I don't know that many black people who like Clarence Thomas. And I know a lot of black people.
So in your first year of law school in torts class, you would learn a phrase, res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. I would say we needn't call him an Uncle Tom because we know what the policies look like. And jokes aside, with Clarence Thomas, the problem is he's so often loud and wrong, if you ask me, on his reading of the Constitution. He's what you call an originalist. He looks at the words written in the Constitution, which to determine, his decisions, which is ironic because the words written in the Constitution originally wouldn't even have him be a full person, right? So he just seems to be loud and wrong on everything. And what we extrapolate from that is this. One, I think the Republicans in Georgia are not only playing a game of politics as it relates to parties, but with race, right? We see Herschel Walker as their candidate, and it seems like some of these state legislators are trying to, prop him up to say, see, look, it's not about race. We've got this black guy that we're calling the paragon of progress. But Clarence Thomas has made some really terrible decisions, and it's a concern, particularly when we know about the nexus between his wife and the January 6th insurrectionists and the fact that there's no recusal and no ethics with the Supreme Court. It's extremely problematic because, if you look at him objectively, he's could be an incredibly impressive person with his education and his background, but he has used it to our detriment. So I don't like to use that label, but the reality is he has not done any helping of us in his position, which is such an important position as we talk about on this show so often. As a Supreme Court justice, they set the tenor of so much of what happens in our country, and he is so often the loudest and wrongest in the position that he takes.
About 90 seconds left. Joe, you got 45 seconds to go.
From the very beginning when he was appointed, he is the one that talks about it not being about race and those types of things, but he was ready to call it a high-tech lynching as soon as Anita Hill came around. And he's been determined to antagonize us ever since. So he shouldn't be awarded with anybody's statue for sure. But it's interesting the things that Georgia is arguing about nowadays. I thought it was interesting. You don't have to call him Uncle Tom. because you know what he's doing. He's living it. And so hopefully we can talk about things that are more useful in the Georgia State Legislature in the future.
Michael, 45 seconds, go.
The real Uncle Tom's name was Josiah Henson. Josiah Henson was a runaway slave from Maryland. He ran away in 1830. He published his autobiography in 1849. Harriet Beecher Stowe published Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852 based upon his autobiography. The real Uncle Tom in the story was a hero who refused to beat black women, who refused to tell what runaway slaves were. The traitor in the story, Uncle Tom's Cabin, his name was Sambo. So if anything, we should call Clarence Thomas a Sambo, not Uncle Tom. Study the real Uncle Tom, whose name was Josiah Henson.
All right, then. And y'all know I do a lot of traveling around the country. Oftentimes, I would take photos of monuments to African Americans. I can guarantee you this. If Georgia erects a statue of Clarence Thomas, I ain't nowhere in hell I'm taking that picture. At all. I think I met the man twice, got absolutely no respect for Clarence Thomas whatsoever. And when he was all upset, conservatives were upset when he wasn't included in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, didn't bother me 1 second.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our
So
stuff.
please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.